Thank you, Joe. And thank you, everybody, for being with us on pretty short notice on Friday of a long weekend. We are very proud and honored to introduce John Tortorella as the 23rd head coach in Flyers history. John is, a man that I knew well of, but never really had the opportunity to get to know until this process. And through a very lengthy process that started right at the conclusion of the regular season, we ended up interviewing 8 candidates. And then a few of those candidates had second interviews as well. And at the end of a very good, long, exhaustive process, we're very proud today to introduce John. And he is the right coach at this time for the Philadelphia Flyers. So I know you guys have a lot of questions, and with that, we can get at it.
Okay, we'll open up the floor for questions. Again, please use the raise hand function if you wish to ask either of them a question. Olivia Reiner, you're on with Chuck and John. Go ahead.
Hi, John. Welcome. In the release that we received, you mentioned that from your first conversation with Chuck that you knew this was the right fit for you. What gave you the confidence that this was the opportunity for you?
Yeah, I think you go into the process we went to, and as Chuck said, it was deep. A lot of questions in different areas about the person, about the game, about how to approach the game. And I just felt comfortable right from the get-go in my conversation with Chuck. I thought it was easy flowing. He was to the point. I just thought in my mind, I hope Chuck feels the same way. I just felt so comfortable talking with him. It was like two guys talking hockey. And I've heard, I think coaches, when they go into this, they do their homework a little bit as general managers do on coaches. I do with the general manager. And I asked some questions of people that know Chuck. And I just received so much information, so much great information about just how good a guy and a good man that he is. And you can see that. I appreciated his honesty. I appreciated his willingness just to let me know how this was all going to work. It was going to be lengthy, and I just thought he was upfront with me right from the get-go.
Charlie O'Connor, you're on with Chuck and John. Go ahead.
Yeah, this is for John. Welcome to Philadelphia, John.
Thank you, Charlie.
Obviously, with your track record, you're not maybe necessarily going to be interested in signing on to be the coach of a team that is facing a long rebuild. Obviously, the Flyers finished with the 4th worst record in hockey last year. What convinced you in your research about the team and also your conversations with Chuck that this team can turn things around quickly?
Yeah, let's first talk about the emblem. As I told Chuck, I look at that emblem and, guys, back in 2004, when we were fortunate enough, I was coaching Tampa and we went through Philly to win a Stanley Cup, beating Philly in the conference finals. I remember telling my wife, and I told Chuck this story, man, that is a place I would love an opportunity to be and coach. The passion of the people, the building, everything about the city, it was really neat for me. And I remember when my first meeting with Chuck, when we started this, he wore a short shirt with the emblem, and I said, man, that's where I want to be. That's an opportunity that I have right now as I speak with you, and I know Chuck wants to get going here and turn it around. I am not going to critique anything that's happened before. I know it's been a little bit of a struggle. I think Chuck and I spoke the same language and how we get this fixed quickly. And it was really intriguing to me. And it did nothing but enhance my interest as I went through the process with Chuck and the other guys asking questions as far as what they want this team to be and what they want the standard to be. And guys, I couldn't be more excited about being part of the Philadelphia Flyers. It may sound a little silly, but even when I was coaching other teams, I've always thought about that city. I've always thought about that team, about hoping to have an opportunity along the way.
Follow up, Charlie.
Yeah, this question would be for Chuck. Chuck, you mentioned in your opening statement that you felt that John was the right coach at this time for the Flyers. Would you be able to elaborate on what made you believe that he is the right coach at this time for this team?
Yeah, well, first of all, when we started this process, we put together, an ideal candidate profile, we called it. We worked with an outside search firm to set the process up and to make it a formal search process, which is something I don't know that has happened a lot in our industry. It's pretty typical, I think, in corporate America. But we wanted to really take a long look into what we wanted and who we wanted as a head coach. So we sort of created a profile, and that profile, I wrote down a few notes here. We were looking for an experienced, respected coach, preferably somebody with extensive NHL head coaching experience. We were looking for somebody with a lengthy track record of success. We were looking for somebody that had a demonstrated ability to introduce structure and reduce goals against, improve penalty killing, make life easier for our goaltenders. We were looking for somebody with a proven ability to hold players accountable to a high standard. Standard of conduct on and off the ice, a standard of play, a standard of team orientation, a standard of what you put into your game. We were looking for somebody with a proven ability to develop young players. We were looking for somebody with strong communication skills. I think deep down, there are a lot of demanding coaches in the NHL, but ultimately players will respond if they know you're demanding, but you're demanding in a sense that you care about them. You want what's best for them. You're not being demanding for yourself. You're being demanding to make the player better, to make the team better. And nobody personifies that more than John Tortorella. So there was a few other attributes in the profile we put together. And I know through the interview process, Brent Flair and Danny Briere joined me in the initial round of interviews. Dean Lombardi joined that group for the second round. We were the people in the room. It was handled internally, the interview process, and to a man, we all felt John was the guy for the job.
Jordan Hall, you're on with Chuck and John. Go ahead.
Hey guys, this question is for John. John, welcome to Philly.
Thanks, Jordan.
Absolutely. You're obviously known as a demanding coach, an old school coach, but can you maybe tell people a little bit about how you balance that with allowing your players to play to their skill levels and some of their strengths?
Yeah, it's I think especially in today's league, I think it's very important with such a young league. I remember I used to be back early in my career. I dot every I, cross every T. I almost wanted the game. I wanted to predict the game. I wanted them to move the way I wanted them to move in certain situations, and kind of prepared the team that way. I think I've kind of come full circle here in allowing. I think players need to express themselves. You need structure. I think one of the most important attributes of a head coach is to define and teach the structure away from the puck. And I work at that. And I kind of get coined as that defensive guy. You can coin me any way you want. You can say what you want about me. That's a huge part of winning, as you see in the playoffs right now, as you listen to some of the players talking about it in the playoffs right now. It's a huge part of being who you want to be. And I think it really develops a standard of being a hard team to play against. On the other side of that, it is, I think you have to get out of the way. I do think we overcoach at times. It's something that I try to check myself daily as I'm dealing with the players, especially in the offensive part of the game. I don't have the ability or the sight that offensive people have, or the creativity that they have. I need to allow them to play, but it's going to be a two-way street. It needs to be a two-way street. Just show me that you're willing to give us something away from the puck. I'm not going to turn you into a checker. but you got to show me, and more importantly, show your teammates that you're willing to do some of the other stuff as an offensive guy away from the puck. Then you have something. And I think that's what develops the right camaraderie of a hockey club. And it develops the right attitude of a hockey club and how hard you have to be. And I think it starts with your top guys. So it's kind of a give and take there. And it's a teaching process as we go through. And I am, as I said, I'm looking forward. Already made some calls today, having some meetings next week with some of the guys to start this teaching of a standard and the mentality of what we're going to be. And it'll be a conversation. It's going to be a back and forth conversation because I want to learn about them as they will learn about me.
Anthony Sanfilippo, you're on with Chuck and John. Go ahead.
Yeah, hi, this question is for John. John, welcome to Philly.
Thanks, Anthony.
I went back and listened to your introductory press conference in Columbus back in, I guess it was 2015, 16, whatever year it was. And one of the things you were just talking about this, we touched on this briefly with Jordan, but you talked about wanting to listen to the players more and see what it's like. Is the difference between today's player and maybe the players that you were coaching back in 2004 when you won the cup, that they just need they want to be heard and need an explanation? And is that something that you've kind of had to adapt the way you treat them and work with them?
Yes, absolutely, Anthony. It's a great question because I think it's the evolution of a coach. I know we've talked, Mike Sullivan and I have talked a lot about this question, this subject you're talking about. And it needs to be a two-way street. It needs to be, I think coaches get tunnel vision sometimes. Hey, listen, I'm one of them. That's where we have to check ourselves a little bit. And even though you want to maybe kind of jump in a conversation, maybe just stop for a couple of minutes and continue to listen. I do think the young athlete, it's a different athlete right now. That's a huge part of a coach's responsibility, is to work with the different athletes as you go through. As long as I've been in the league, I've seen it go up and down and different avenues as what the athletes are. So we have to make that adjustment. And having said that, there's a fine line there, guys. You can't allow it to run amok, and that's when you get into problems and you lose that standard. You lose that team concept of the merit of playing in a National Hockey League, of becoming a pro. That's basically what we're talking about here, is going through these conversations, going through these teaching situations, and developing a pro. I don't know, as I told Chuck in the conversations I've had with him, I don't know what I enjoy most is trying to develop the hockey player or trying to develop the person, because it's pretty cool. I'm developing a person in a locker room. My daughter's a school teacher. She's developing young kids in a classroom. My son's in the Army. He's a leader of men. He's developing people there. But it's all the same thing, is trying to develop the people. And we have to make changes as coaches, as athletes are different. And I'm looking forward to listening. It was something I was a little bit stubborn back in the day, but I think I've learned. And I've learned watching other coaches, and I've just learned through the progression of seeing what the athlete is.
Sam Carchidi, you're on with John and Chuck. Go ahead.
Yeah, John, welcome aboard. And
Thanks, Sam.
From listening to you, it sounds like you've mellowed over the years. Would you agree with that? That's the first part. And the second part is this Flyers team hasn't really had a true identity in the last few years. What would you like that identity to be?
Yeah, it's kind of there's a lot of things that come into identity. I think the number one responsibility for me, I think, going in here is to listen, to meet the players, and we're going to start that next week, to listen, understand them a little bit. I do think, I'll be honest with you, I think it takes a little time for the players to understand me. I want to go through that process with them. And then you start getting into the teaching of the game. And I do believe the first thing, as far as on ice, that I need to attack is the play away from the puck. I think we need to give Carter a little bit more support as far as how we play around him. allow him to really get himself into the National Hockey League. He's 23 as a goalie. And I'm not making any criticisms as prior play, but this is how you go about it. And that's when you're teaching that part, Sam, that's when so many different avenues come into play in teaching what your identity is. That bottom line is, I want the team to be harder. I think we need to present ourselves, look harder, coming off the bus, coming into buildings. I want other teams to say, you know what, we got our hands full tonight. You know, all the things that come with that starts with teaching with play away from the puck. And we'll go through some experiences as you go through it. And that's when you start becoming who you are. And the trick for the coaching staff is to get individuals to do that. And then you get them to join in as a team. And that's when you have a group of men that, you know, when you go in that locker room, there's belief and there's some hardness. We got to get some skin. We've got to grow some skin. And it goes through a lot of these different experiences that we'll go through as we start our camp.
Follow up, Sam?
Yeah. Do you see this, John, as a rebuilding year, or do you see it as a year where you can be a playoff contender and maybe beyond?
I don't make predictions, Sam. I'm not going there. I did that early in my career and it just backfired. I'm not going there. You know what I see this as? I see this as I'm one fortunate guy that went through the process with Chuck. The Philadelphia Flyers chose me to run that team. I'm going to go in there and run that team the way I think I should. I'm looking to try to win games. I'm trying to get our team ready to be the right people, the right pros, and play as a team. And then we'll take it one day at a time. I'm not going to look ahead. I'm going to focus on just an unbelievable opportunity I have to coach with that emblem.
Adam Kimmelman, you're on with Chuck and John. Go ahead.
Yeah, hi. This is questions for John. Welcome to Philadelphia, John.
Thanks,
You had
Adam.
the perspective of being able to watch this team on TV. You've coached against a number of these players. I'm curious, is there anybody on this group that you're most looking forward to working with that you haven't worked in the past, that you're just intrigued by what you can learn from them from being around them on a day-to-day basis?
You know, I don't have any one particular guy, Adam, because I know Cam. I coached him for 4 or 5 years. I don't know a lot of other guys. I'm looking I want them to talk to me as we go through the summer meetings with them. I want to try to get an idea. You guys can tell me who they are. Chuck can tell me who they are. I need to see it. I need to experience them sitting down off season. I need to see it in practice. I need to see it maybe in some conflict along the way, as we may have a disagreement or two along the way, and see who they are, and coach them accordingly that way. So I'm not gonna pick out one guy because I don't know a lot of the players, and I'm looking for the opportunity for me to get to know them and them to get to know me, and then let's get at it. And as you said, I kind of get put in a box. I'm gonna coach hard, but I'm always going to be fair with these guys, and they will have total honesty from me. They're going to know where they stand each and every day. And I think that enhances communication, and it enhances honesty coming from the player also. And that's how we're going to approach it.
Bill Meltzer, you're on with Chuck and John. Go ahead.
Yeah, first of all, welcome aboard, John. But I guess my first question is, do you have a timetable for setting up your assistant coaching staff, and what are the attributes you look in putting together a staff, you and Chuck?
Yeah, Chuck and I are going to do this together. We talked about this Thursday, and we both have a list. I asked Chuck for his help. We're certainly, I'm not going to get into a lot of the conversation, but we're certainly looking for, we want to get a guy that's going to help us on our power play. I think a lot of teams look for that guy. I know Chuck and I were throwing names around when I was with him the other day. That's ongoing right now. We're just starting. I mean, I'm kind of swimming upstream here, and just trying to get, after meeting with Chuck, getting things done, meeting with you guys. We're going to get to that. I'm going to be in the office there for a few days next week, and we'll have more conversations about that. But certainly, I'll give you that. I'd like to couple a power play guy into a coach that can also be with an offensive guy and help him along the way, maybe individually with tape. I mean, who the hell am I to sit down with an offensive guy that sees the ice the way these guys do and try to communicate that with him? I want some help there. And I want some guy to help us with our power play in that way too. So we'll get together and go through that process.
Follow up, Bill?
Yes, I do. John, when we had exit day with the players, kind of the beginning of the process of hiring a coach, Cam Atkinson was talking about things that he had learned from you in Columbus, the importance of practice and preparation, taking the way you practice into the way you play in games, just a general attitude and demeanor of professionalism. So my question to you is, you talked about watching players grow, not just as on the ice, but as people. How did you see Cam, grow as a hockey player and I guess as a person as well over your years together?
Yeah, when I first got there, Cam was being sat out. And I'm not sure what happened. It was 8 games into a season. I'm not sure what happened, but when I first, Cam was stubborn. I like his stubbornness. I think players of that quality, of what he has to do in the size that he is, and what he has to do as a player in the National Hockey League and be a top-notch player like he is, you got to have that stubbornness. So we went back and forth, and it took us a while because I asked for more. I think Cam was comfortable coming to practice and practicing. If you come to practice and practice, you didn't do your work. You come to practice and you be ready to practice. You have a readiness about you. And I think that it comes off of how leadership presents themselves in the locker room on a practice day. And it took us a little while for a number of guys in Columbus to understand you're not just going to practice to get through it. We're going to practice for a purpose, and we're going to go hard. And so Cam and I went through a number of different roads and sat Cam out a few times along the way. But I look at that guy now and what he's become, how hard he plays, how he's grown as a leader, and has grown as a person. I'm very fortunate to spend some time with him, and I kind of rely on him sometimes. I relied on him in Columbus as your relationship changes. As a coach, you have to remember, you put them through the paces and they grow, show them a little respect. You need to back off and allow them to maybe help you a little bit. And I think that's where Cam and I are now in our relationship, and family man. And I couldn't be prouder of him.
Dan Gelston, you're on with John and Chuck. Go ahead.
How you doing?
Hey, Dan.
So earlier you said Chuck and I spoke the same language and how we can get this fixed quickly. And from someone who's covered the team, watched the team, I'm not really sure like how are you going to do that? How are you going to fix them quickly? And I guess what is your definition of quick?
Well, so as far as the team,
yeah,
I'm going to coach the team with the time frame. You guys aren't going to get me into that corner of saying we're going to do this, we're going to do that. I am going to coach that team hard right away. We are going to. It's going to be a very difficult camp, a high volume of skating. They will be told about this during the summer here, as far as how we're going to approach this. I guess that's what I'm saying to you. We're attacking it. It's not going to be, I guess it's a rebuild, a retool, whatever language that's used. I am approaching each and every day to try to make each individual player play better as a player and a person, and then as a team trying to get better in each and every day. That will take care of the time frame. Wherever it goes, it goes. But I'm not going to calmly go about it in, all right, let's just back them off a little bit. We still have some struggles in this area here. And because we had a tough year last, let's just try to grow very slowly. We're going at it. And the speed of it will be whatever happens with it. What I'm telling you, Dan, is I am just going at it as quickly as I can to try to make us the best we can be, especially away from the puck when we first start the season.
And a quick follow-up. You mentioned that you've changed a bit in your approach sometimes through the years, but do you feel like when your tenures have ended, it's because you've gone too hard, or it's
No,
your approach
no,
has
no.
people stop listening, or?
No, that's what you guys talk about. I don't think that at all. I know my players. I do, and listen, it's really none of my business what people think of me. I've been coined a lot of different things along the way here, and that I'm a short-term coach where I've coached one team 5 years, another team 6 years, another team 5 years. It's to me, it's a myth. It's something people like talking about, because I think you see things on the screen sometimes as far as my interactions with some players. I feel very confident. If you talk to some of the players that people think I ran out, I'm very confident you'd have an interesting answer to your question.
Wayne Fish, you're on with Chuck and John. Go ahead.
Hi, John. Welcome to Philadelphia.
Thanks, Wayne.
On a lighter note, there's a strong connection here with Boston, and I'm wondering if perhaps this opportunity might afford itself to a little kidding around with some of the players that you know from the Boston area.
I'm not sure what you're asking me, Wayne.
Well, in other words, you guys like Kevin Hayes, Cam, they all have this in origin and sort of like speak the language of Boston. Can that help us?
Yeah.
Connection there?
Yeah, with Cam's down the street from me here out in New York, out in Connecticut now, and with Hazy, Kevin was one of my first calls today when I got back from Philly. He was one of my first calls today. I'm trying to meet with him, whether we meet in Boston or meet in Philly. I don't know him that well, Wayne. I hear great things about the type of person he is. He's very likable. Obviously had some family situations along the way here. I'm not sure who asked me the question where you try to pick out one player that you really, maybe I fibbed a little bit here. I'm really interested in talking to Kevin because I think Kevin is one that I'm anxious to work with, because I think there's more there. I think he's a huge piece to the puzzle up the middle of the ice for this organization with Sean, him, and so he's one I'm going to try to talk to right away. And I'm not used talking about. I'm not going to be joking. I'm going to be interested to hear what he has to say. I hear he's a tremendous guy, and I want to try to help him, because if I can help him and make him understand that we're going to try to get him to another level, what does he do for the Flyer organization up the middle of the ice? I mean, I've watched him from afar, and there's more there, and it's my responsibility to try to get that out of him. I hope that answers your question.
Stephanie Driver, you're on with Chuck and John. Go ahead.
Hi, Chuck, and welcome to Philadelphia, John.
Thank you.
So the interview process is just as much about you interviewing the Flyers as it is them interviewing you. What is it about this team and this organization that really got you excited about taking this job?
Yeah, and Chuck was, Chuck was fantastic in allowing me to ask questions. Again, I'm pretty inexperienced in the interview process. I really haven't interviewed a whole bunch in my career, and I wasn't sure what to expect. And I had questions. He was even when we met Thursday. I had a number of questions, and I thought we had a great conversation about a lot of things moving ahead here. So I think that's really important. You talk about coaches and players. I think it's the same thing with general managers and coaches. I think it's a huge part of success is being able to communicate with one another, and he allowed that. So I was really it was fun for me. I loved the conversation because, hey, I've been out here, with horses and dogs. I've been shoveling a lot of shit out here for the past 8 or 9 months. Excuse my language, but I wanted to talk hockey, and it was a blast to talk hockey with those guys. And now I feel so very fortunate that I'm going to be part of the Philadelphia Flyer organization. To answer your question, it's the Philadelphia Flyers. That's all I need to say. It's something that I have a tremendous amount of respect for the organization, and I couldn't be happier to be part of it. Excuse my language. I'm sorry.
Follow up, Stephanie.
Yeah, absolutely. looking at the other side of that, was there anything that gave you pause about whether it's the roster or the organization, anything that you took a look at and was like, this is something that I would like to change right away?
No, hey, I'm not going to sit here and say that we're going to be Stanley Cup contenders next year. I get that. I know there's some work to do, but having said that, I know there's some work to do. That's what I want to do. That's what coaches do. I'm looking forward to the challenge. And as I started with my research on Chuck, and as we've grown a little bit here, getting to know one another, I'm really interested to do it with him. And yeah, so I'm not afraid of what people are saying about the team. I get it's out there. It fuels me. It does. It fuels me as far as some of the predictions or some of the thoughts about what's going on with the team, what went on with the process with us. That just fuels me. And I'm looking forward to getting to the bunker in that locker room with all the Flyers and get about our business.
Joe Fordyce, you're on with Chuck and John. Go ahead.
Hi, John. Welcome to Philadelphia.
Thanks, Joe.
I'm fortunate enough to work with one of your former players, Scott Hartnell, and I've talked to him a bunch about what it was like, his experience playing with you. And he talked about the culture that you instilled in Columbus from top to bottom, whether it be equipment guys, trainers, coaches, whatever the case may be, and of course the players. I'm wondering if you view this as a situation with the Flyers where they need a little bit of a shakeup in terms of the culture.
Yes. Yeah. And again, that's not a criticism, but it's what if we want to get to growing and be who we want to be, that organization that people look at as a standard. Yeah. The culture has to change. You know what, Joe? Culture, accountability, all those words, they're really cool summertime words. People like saying those things during the summer. I think us as coaches, when we get the job, it's about the culture, changing the account, all that stuff. Really easy to say, really difficult to do. That's an everyday process. That's a process that I can't let things go in certain situations on a Tuesday. And I say, you know what? It's been a long day. I'll get that Wednesday. No, because something else is going to happen Wednesday, probably. I think that's the type of the discipline I think a coach needs to get the culture. I hate using the word, I just call it standard. I want our guys to be proud of themselves. I want you guys, I want our fans to be proud of us, how we look, how we present ourselves, how we attack the game, how we handle situations in the blue paint. If you're talking about on the ice, how we stick up for one another in certain situations. I want people to feel proud of that. And that's when you get the camaraderie. When Kevin Hayes goes out there and blocks a shot at a huge time in the game, what does that do for your bench? You know, those are all situations that come into play to get your team to be what you want them to be. And then when you get there, when you go in the room, you feel it. You can feel it. And there's not a cooler feeling in the world from a coach's point of view, going into a locker room and know there's belief there and that they care about one another and they're going to do the things they need to do to be that hard Philadelphia Flyer team.
Okay, we have time for a few more questions. Ariel Melendez, you're on with Chuck and John. Go ahead.
Hey, John, welcome to Philadelphia.
Thanks, Ariel.
We've kind of talked about a lot of your former players, Cam Atkinson, Scott Hartnell, and a lot of these guys, as we've seen, say, you're a tough guy to play for in the moment, but afterwards, you know, when you're gone or whether they've moved on, they're like, you know what, he did a lot, he really helped me. Kind of in your eyes, what do you think that relationship has been like between you and the players that's kind of allowed them to kind of grow and be like, you know what, he really did something for me?
Yeah, it's a great question, Ariel. And I think someone else is asking questions about running people out of teams and stuff like that. I'm not in the business to embarrass people. I'm not in the business to run people out of organizations. I'm in the business, and I'll tell you all right now, my job is to push athletes to levels that they're not used to getting to. And I'm going to do that. I've made mistakes. I've pushed too hard at certain times, and I've made mistakes along the way. But that is my job. And I'm going to do it fairly, and I'm always going to do it honestly. They will always know why. And as you go through it, and there's some conflict along the way, and there is going to be conflict. There's honesty amongst a player and a coach when you're in that, maybe that crescendo of trying to get them to that spot. When you get there and you have those conversations, they will know that I care about them. And why I'm doing this is because if I didn't, I would not be doing my job for them. And I don't get the confusion about trying to push athletes. I just don't understand the confusion. A player's coach or a hard coach, I don't agree with that. A coach's job is to make them the absolute best people they can be and the absolute best player they can be. And it's not by pushing them there. I'm going to push them there. And as we go through it, and you go through all that, so Scotty Hartnell, I had to wrestle the room away from him in Columbus. I didn't like the room when I went into Columbus. Him and I had wrestling matches about this, and I benched Scotty. We had so many different conversations. But as we got through it, I loved the man. And he was so good for us as we moved on with that team, with his leadership. And that's where relationships are. And so the nonsense about hardness and quitting on you, I don't buy it, and I never will. And I've made mistakes, but we always have those conversations, and they're going to know that I care about them, and they know, and they'll eventually find out why I do the things I do.
Rob Parent, you're on with Chuck and John. Go ahead.
Hey, John, good luck here.
Thanks, Rob.
You had mentioned earlier about being short stays, 5 years, 6 years. That's actually really long stays for a head coach. And it just seems to be getting more and more like that. Do you have a comment on that, or how long ago did you kind of accept that maybe in your career?
As far as being a short-term coach?
Just the fact that the coaching business is a short-term situation in the NHL.
I'll tell you, Rob, and I'll be honest with you guys, coaches hate hearing that there's a shelf life for a coach. We hate hearing it. But I'll be honest with you, as the game has gone on here, and where the athlete is now, the type of athlete we're coaching now, and more and more communication from them, which is terrific. Again, there's a fine line though, because you can create a monster too, and allowing it to get too far away from you. I do think there is a shelf life for a coach. I do think there is. And you ask any coach, I listen to Butchie gets fired out of Boston, and a number of other coaches. We all know that. We all know that's going to happen. And that's the world we live in. And those aren't, it's not our decisions. Listen, Yarmo and I out in Columbus, was there for 6 years. Yarmo and I had some honest conversations after my 5th year. I felt it was time for me to go. I think I did the stuff I needed to do. I could see the team was going to change. I couldn't do the same things in building the team with the people I just went through building the club, if that makes sense. And I think we kind of came to that it's time to go. Stayed another year, didn't have a good year, maybe stayed too long. And I admit to that, but I think that's what was really cool for me and Yarmo is we both kind of knew it was time. He showed me the respect of asking me how much longer I wanted to coach. And I kind of told him, I think it's probably time for me to go. So those are the conversations you have with your general manager. And so I think I think coaches accept it more now than back in the day. We're a little bit more stubborn about it, but I do think there is a shelf life for a coach.
Olivia Reiner, you're on with Chuck and John. Go ahead.
Hi again, John. You spent this past year away from the NHL coaching world. I'm curious, what kind of perspective did you gain on your own career, on the sport, just by not being a part of this?
It first of all, it was great for me, my wife, my kids. It was a year that, you know, it's a very busy time as a hockey coach, and I enjoyed that tremendously. We do a lot of work with animal welfare, and got to sink our teeth into that a little bit more. But what I did, I was very fortunate to work at ESPN for a little bit, and it gave me a chance to step back. I got to listen to other coaches after games, what they're talking about. I got to look at different styles of play as the games are being played. I got to listen to players, how they interview and what they're saying. I learned a lot. I did, and especially watching how other coaches handle themselves. I think you need to. You can't be someone else. You need to have your own personality. But I learned a lot from listening to other coaches talk about the team and what they're looking for. You know, this couples kind of with analytics. I think we get blinders on as coaches. I think analytics is it helped me kind of verify some things are going really well with the team. I thought they were, but that really verifies it. But it also helps you see, you know, crap, we kind of missed this, and the numbers show that to me. You know, so coaches talk about all that stuff. So not being the pressure of it, not being just worried about your team, I get to watch other teams, other coaches, other players, and learn that way. So and now I get to coach this damn team, the Flyers. I'm so lucky to spend a year away and come to this organization, an organization that I have truly respected.
Sam Carchidi, you're on with Chuck and John. Go ahead.
Yeah, this is for Chuck. Chuck, just want to ask you, how did the outside search committee help with the whole process? And a follow-up to that is, what do you say to a report that said you were against the committee's recommendation to hire John?
That's exactly why we hired him, because I was against it. No, there's so much nonsense out there, but no, we hired a company called the Coaches Agency. They've been involved in GM and coaches searches with a couple of different teams in the National Hockey League. As I mentioned earlier, it's not a common practice yet, but I think sports will probably start to mirror corporate America a little bit more by using these types of search firms in the search. But they allowed us to set up a process, and I've hired coaches before, and but I can't say I ever had a great process. I interviewed some great candidates, but we really wanted to go through it methodically. Again, create an ideal candidate profile for what we're looking for. They came to us with a list of well over 50 names of candidates that we placed into different buckets. We used that candidate profile to filter through the initial list of names, got down to about 15 or so names. We did some research, we had some meetings. We filtered that down to about 8 names. So they were very involved in that initial vetting process. They had some great ideas in terms of the interview template, how to run a proper interview, the types of questions to ask. We came up with a plan where we basically asked the coaches to pitch us. All eight coaches we interviewed were great coaches. All of them could have coached the Philadelphia Flyers. We knew they were good. So it was less about tell us about your life or your history. It's more about why you for the Flyers? How would you run our team? And from there, you could get into questions. So they were very involved in that process. But once we got down to 8 candidates, as I mentioned before, we took over the process in terms of the interviewing. We met as a group, Danny Briere, Brent Flair, Dean Lombardi, and me. After interviews, we debriefed, we talked about strengths, weaknesses of the candidates, who did we want to go forward with. So that process was great. We had 4 second interviews. The last of the second interviews was this past Sunday. And by Monday, I made the decision John was the guy. And again, we had a lot of time to debate things as a group, but I was sitting in our pro meetings on Monday and I said, Torts is the guy. He's the guy we need, and reached out to him on Tuesday. Had a good conversation. I indicated to him that he was the number one candidate on our list, but before we went forward and before we got into, talking about contract and that kind of stuff, I wanted him to come back on Thursday, it turned out to be, but let's sit down and have a conversation about everything. Let's continue to build our relationship, but let's talk about roster and coaching staff and, day of a game. How does he want to be treated? Does he want me to come down and have a coffee with him, or does he want me to stay the hell away? Like, what makes him tick? Travel logistics, morning skates, what does he like to do? Fitness testing, training, everything. We just went through all the minutiae of that's involved in a coach GM relationship. And I thought it was just important, and I believe John did too, to have these candid conversations so there's no surprises down the road. And the goal isn't to be in agreement on everything, but the goal is to have good candid conversation and kind of understand where each of us are coming from. And we talked for 2 or 3 hours yesterday afternoon, offered him a contract, and I think we haggled for about 10 minutes, John, something like that. John was pretty prepared. He did a good job. And, but it honestly took 10 minutes, shook hands, and here we are about 22 hours later. So that's the whole process in a nutshell. John was absolutely my first choice. It was my decision. I think if you spoke with Danny or Brent or Dean Lombardi, they would concur that he was the right candidate at this time for the Philadelphia Flyers. So in terms of all the reports out there, Sam, I don't know if you know, but you shouldn't trust everything you read.
Okay, we have time for 2 more questions. Anthony Sanfilippo, you're on with Chuck and John. Go ahead.
Yeah, hi. This question is for Chuck. Chuck, you listed a bunch of things that went into when you guys put the initial search together of what you were looking for in a coach. One of the things that you did not mention, and I wanted to see what your thoughts are here with John, is just how adding a coach like John to the organization plays when you go into this off-season work that you have to do, whether it be, negotiating contracts or trying to get a free agent to come into play here. How much of that really comes in to say, hey, here is the coach that we have, and here's his experience, and here's why we think this would be a good fit for you. How much do you think that that's important when you're talking with those players?
Well, look, all of the 8 coaches we ended up interviewing, all of them are tremendous people and very good coaches. And again, as I mentioned to you, all of them, I think, could have come in and helped the Philadelphia Flyers. So, in terms of selling our franchise or having a coach impact those types of things, John is respected immensely throughout the industry. We did our homework. We spoke to former players and spoke with agents, spoke with people he'd coached with, spoke with managers that worked with him, spoke with league officials. And John is universally respected and admired for his body of work. And I think it'll be a huge plus as we go forward and sell the Flyers. But what we were looking for were the things that I laid out before. And John fits the bill the best. And we're very fortunate that he agreed to come to Philadelphia. I think you saw the passion, his honesty, even in the way he answered your questions today. And that's what we have to look forward to.
And our last question before we wrap things up, Charlie O'Connor, you're on with Chuck and John. Go ahead.
Yeah, this is for Chuck. It kind of jumps off the last question a bit. Obviously you've been working on not just the coaching search, but also your plan for the offseason. And you didn't necessarily know going into the offseason who the coach was going to be. Now that the coaching decision has been made, now that it's John is going to be the coach, I guess, number one, does getting a coach with the track record of John Tortorella, does that make it more likely for you guys to be more aggressive this summer in terms of trades and free agency? And also, as a follow-up to that, how much will John play a role in impacting the decisions that are made from a roster standpoint?
Well, look, as for the offseason, as I mentioned before, we're going to try to be aggressive in improving our team. We're going to look at every avenue to get better. We live in a cap world, so that certainly creates some challenges for every team. And fortunately, we're not quite as hamstrung as several teams that have real challenges. But you know, that's the reality of the world we look in, but we're going to look at trades. We're going to look at free agency. Clearly, we're going to have some young players that are going to have an opportunity to earn a spot on our team. As I mentioned before, John's track record of developing young players is really impressive and a really important part of why he's here now. So, but John, like every coach I've worked with, it's a collaborative process. I think it's really important to get their vision on the type of roster they want to coach. I mean, ultimately, it's my decision, but every manager takes into account how a coach wants to have a roster, the ideal composition of your bottom six or whatever it may be. So clearly there's going to be a lot of communication as we build this together, but we're going to still aggressively look at every way to get better. And as John has spoken to a lot today, really we have to look inside here too. There's a lot of things we can do to improve what we have and to improve the standards that we hold ourselves to get in better shape, to defend better. Everything. There's so many ways that we're excited to look into it and find ways to get better.
Okay, Chuck, John, thank you very much for your time today. John, welcome to Philadelphia.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
that wraps things up for the press conference for today. The link sent out earlier will have a video and audio of this press conference should you need it. Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.